The first scream echoed through the marble halls before sunrise, and by breakfast, another nanny was already running out the front door with tears streaming down her face. The security cameras captured the same heartbreaking scene that had repeated itself over and over for nearly 3 years. The little girl stood silently at the top of the grand staircase, hugging an old stuffed rabbit with one arm while watching another caregiver disappear forever. The billionaire who owned the mansion had enough money to buy private islands, luxury jets, and entire companies. Yet he couldn't find a single person who could stay with his lonely daughter. Every nanny quit. Every expert failed. Every promise was broken. But no one could have imagined that the one person who would finally change everything was a humble waitress who had never cared for a wealthy child in her life. If you believe kindness, second chances, and compassion can change someone's life, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories that remind us the greatest miracles often begin with the smallest acts of love. Nathan Brooks was one of the most successful businessmen in New York City. At only 46 years old, he had built a billion-dollar technology empire through years of sacrifice and determination. His name appeared in business magazines, financial news, and television interviews. People admired his intelligence and discipline, believing he had the perfect life. What they never saw was the painful silence waiting behind the gates of his enormous estate in Westchester County. 3 years earlier, his beloved wife, Grace, had died unexpectedly after a sudden illness, leaving behind their 5-year-old daughter, Chloe. From that day forward, Nathan buried himself in work, because facing the emptiness at home became more painful than spending endless nights inside his office. Chloe, once a cheerful little girl who loved painting flowers with her mother, slowly retreated into sadness. She stopped smiling. She barely spoke. She refused to trust anyone who entered the house. Nathan hired the finest child psychologists in America. He searched for experienced nannies from prestigious agencies across the country. Some had decades of experience raising children from influential families. Others specialized in trauma recovery. Every one of them believed they could succeed. Yet none lasted more than a few weeks. Chloe never screamed or threw violent tantrums. Instead, she built invisible walls around herself. She ignored every instruction, refused every meal prepared with care, and spent hours sitting alone beside the large window overlooking the garden where she once played with her mother. The emotional exhaustion slowly overwhelmed every caregiver until they admitted defeat. News quietly spread among nanny agencies that the Brooks household was impossible. Higher salaries attracted applicants, but the outcome never changed. Nathan felt increasingly hopeless. Deep inside, he blamed himself. He knew Chloe didn't truly reject the nannies. She rejected the pain of loving someone who would eventually disappear again. Meanwhile, 40 miles away in a small town outside the city, 28-year-old Hannah Carter worked double shifts at a family-owned diner called Maple Corner Cafe. Her life had never been easy. After losing both parents during her college years, she left school to support her younger brother until he graduated. She never complained because kindness had always been her greatest strength. Regular customers visited the cafe not only for breakfast, but because Hannah remembered every name, every birthday, and every difficult story they shared. She believed people carried invisible burdens, and sometimes the smallest act of kindness could lighten a heavy heart. One rainy evening, Nathan entered the diner after his luxury car broke down nearby. Wearing simple clothes and exhausted after another failed interview with a nanny, he sat quietly in a corner booth. Hannah noticed the sadness hidden behind his tired eyes before recognizing him from magazine covers. She served his meal with genuine warmth but never treated him differently because of his wealth. Instead of discussing business success, she simply asked if he had eaten enough that day. It was such an ordinary question that Nathan nearly forgot how comforting ordinary kindness could feel. As he prepared to leave, Nathan accidentally left behind a small framed photograph of Chloe. Hannah ran through the rain to return it. When she handed him the picture, she couldn't help noticing the lonely expression on the little girl's face. Nathan surprised himself by sharing the truth with a complete stranger. He admitted that every nanny had quit, that his daughter barely smiled anymore, and that he feared he was losing the only family he had left. Hannah listened without judgment. She didn't offer expert advice or pretend to know complicated solutions. She simply said that children often needed someone willing to earn trust slowly instead of demanding it immediately. Those simple words stayed with Nathan all night. A week later, desperation pushed him to make an unusual decision. He visited the cafe again and offered Hannah a temporary position caring for Chloe. She immediately refused. She explained that she wasn't trained as a nanny and believed someone more qualified deserved the opportunity. Nathan smiled sadly and admitted qualifications had failed dozens of times already. After several days of careful thought, Hannah agreed, but only for 1 month. On her first day inside the mansion, she expected luxury. Instead, she noticed loneliness. Expensive artwork covered the walls, but family photographs were scarce. Every room felt beautiful yet empty. Chloe barely looked at her. Unlike the previous nannies, Hannah didn't introduce schedules, educational games, or strict routines. She simply sat nearby reading library books aloud, whether Chloe listened or not. Sometimes she quietly colored pictures by herself. Other times she baked cookies whose sweet aroma drifted through the house. She never pressured Chloe to join. Days passed. Nothing seemed to happen. Nathan worried another resignation was approaching. Yet Hannah remained patient. One afternoon she found Chloe secretly watching from the hallway while she planted small flower seeds in old clay pots outside the kitchen. Instead of inviting her directly, Hannah simply placed an extra watering can beside the flowers and walked away. Several hours later she returned. The soil was damp. Someone had watered every single plant. She smiled but said nothing. Tiny moments slowly replaced impossible expectations. One morning, a crayon drawing appeared beside Hannah's coffee mug. Another day, Chloe quietly handed her the stuffed rabbit before taking a nap, something she had never trusted anyone enough to do. Weeks turned into months. The mansion gradually transformed. Laughter returned to rooms that had forgotten happiness. Fresh flowers bloomed throughout the garden because Chloe insisted on caring for them every afternoon. Nathan noticed changes not only in his daughter but in himself. For the first time since Grace passed away, he began coming home before sunset. He ate dinner with Chloe instead of attending endless business meetings. He learned how much of childhood he had nearly missed while chasing success he no longer needed. One evening, Hannah found Nathan standing in the garden, watching Chloe chase butterflies beneath the golden evening sky. Tears quietly filled his eyes. He finally understood the miracle had never been about finding the perfect nanny. It had been about finding someone who cared enough to stay. Months later, Chloe celebrated her 9th birthday surrounded by neighbors, classmates, and children from a nearby shelter Hannah had invited with Nathan's permission. Instead of expensive entertainers, they planted a memory garden dedicated to Grace. Every guest planted one flower representing hope, love, or kindness. At the center stood Chloe, smiling brighter than anyone had seen since her mother was alive. Nathan established the Grace Brooks Children's Foundation, funding grief counseling for children who had lost parents. Hannah became director of community outreach while continuing to spend time with Chloe, who no longer saw her as an employee but as family. The newspapers praised Nathan's generosity, but those closest to the family knew the greatest investment he ever made wasn't measured in dollars. It was trusting an ordinary waitress whose greatest qualification was an extraordinary heart. Life continued bringing challenges because healing is never perfect. Chloe still missed her mother on birthdays and holidays. Nathan still carried grief that would never completely disappear. But now they faced those difficult days together instead of alone. The mansion that once echoed with silence became filled with conversations, music, homemade dinners, and simple traditions that money could never buy. Sometimes the people who change our lives don't arrive carrying impressive resumes or famous titles. Sometimes they wear a diner apron, carry tired feet after long shifts, and possess nothing except endless patience, quiet compassion, and the courage to love without expecting anything in return. That is the kind of kindness capable of healing even the deepest wounds. Before this story ends, tell us in the comments, what small act of kindness has changed your life forever? Your story may become the hope someone else needs today. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue sharing inspiring stories that remind the world kindness is still alive, and every act of compassion can change a life forever. As the sun set over the peaceful garden, Chloe gently held Hannah's hand while looking at the flowers planted in her mother's memory. Nathan stood quietly behind them, grateful beyond words. In that beautiful moment, he realized that wealth had built the mansion, but love had finally made it a home. And the impossible miracle everyone had searched for had never been hidden inside expensive solutions. It had been waiting in the gentle heart of a waitress who simply refused to give up on a lonely little girl. Sometimes the greatest heroes are not the richest or the strongest. They are the ones who choose to stay when everyone else walks away.